So in this lesson, we'll be covering 4 ways of finding the equation of a cubic function. Really, I've distilled it into 4 specific ways that are really helpful when you enter the exam room, because these are one of the 4 ways that they always ask cubic functions in the exam. And I've also made it easy for you so that really it's easy to grasp. I'll be showing you hacks, quick tips, and really important fundamentals, and I'll be really highlighting those fundamentals so that you don't forget them. And also, for your convenience, I've split this into 4 parts so as to not have very long-winded videos. So there's 4 parts to this video, and I really strongly suggest that you watch them from part 1 to part 4, and this will be part 1. So suppose you're given the question there, which is f of x is equal to ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d, is a cubic function that passes through the points. We have 4 points it passes through: 0, 16, 1 is to 0, 2 is to 0, and 4 is to 0. So the key thing here is to identify that there's a relationship between these 3 points. And the relationship to that is that they all have the y-coordinate to be 0, which signals that these are x-intercepts. And the other point here has x to be 0, which means this will be our y-intercept. So in essence, we're given 3 x-intercepts. If you observe 3 x-intercepts, and we're given a point, we can say 1 point on the graph. So when given 3 x-intercepts and 1 point on the graph, it only signals one core formula we can use, which is y is equal to a x minus x1, x minus x2, x minus x3. And let me just take your really good to take your memory on a parabola. If you're given a parabola that has 2 x-intercepts, suppose this is -2 and that is +4, and you're given it passes the y-intercept, or it intersects the y-axis at 0 is to -3, and they ask you to find the equation of this parabola. The easiest way to do this is to use the equation y is equal to a x minus x1, x minus x2, and where your x1 and x2 are nothing more than your x-intercept. So you can just choose what becomes your x1 and what becomes your x2, and then you substitute them there. And then for your x and your y is nothing more than the y coordinate of the point on the graph, and the x is nothing more than really x coordinate of the other point that you've been given. And then you just solve for a, and then you're gonna just FOIL out your brackets. It's the same fundamental understanding, and I'll be showing you how to really apply it here. And in that way, we'll be also revising how to find the equation of a parabola by doing this example. So let's dive into it. So let's quickly label our point so as to not mislabel anything. So x1 will be 1, x2 will be 2, and x3 will be 4. So we can go ahead and substitute our values in the equation. Y is equal to a x minus 1, x minus 2, and x minus 4. And this is a really important step. We will be coming back to this step and we'll be referencing it as we go along. So now that we've substituted x1, 2, and 3, we can notice that we have y, a, x, 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 x. What you need to also remember is that these x are the same and they correlate to the y. What do I mean by that? They are referencing the point on the graph. Remember we said we have 1 point on the graph, which is 0 is to 16. So what we just do, we just substitute this point on the graph. With this x we substitute 0, with this y we substitute 16. We can go ahead and substitute 16. X will be 0 minus 1, x will be 0, and then x will be 0. And you can see now we've, in a very smart way, are left with a. Now we can solve for a and isolate a. How do we do that? It's 16a, 0 minus 1, it's minus 1, 0 minus 2, it's minus 2, 0 minus 4, minus 4. And we have 16 is equal to a. We have 3 really variables. We have negative, negative, and negative. So we know that we're going to have a negative. And it will be 1 times 2, which is 2, 2 times 4, which is -8. If you want, or if you prefer a calculator, you just punch in the calculator. And we're solving for a, quickest way to solve for a or isolate a is divide both sides by what's in front of a, or what we're trying to get rid of, and we're trying to get rid of -8. So 16 divided by 8, it will give us nothing more than 2, and the negative really stays. So we found what a is, and remember I said this step is important, the one we made an asterisk on. It's important because now we can come back and substitute our value for a, because we've calculated that our a value is -2. So now let's put this whole story together, really work towards our final answer, because once we found this, really everything is just easy from here. So let's just really do that really quickly. Let's substitute our a value. So we have y is equals to, our a value is -2, open bracket, x minus 1, x minus 2, and x minus 4. So what we have here is just 3 brackets and really a variable on the outside. So what we need to do, what I really advise students and what I would do, right, is just to pick 2 brackets to start with so that I'm not overwhelmed and so that I don't make mistakes. So I'll just choose these 2 brackets where I'll say x by x, x by -4, -2 by x, and -2 by -4. And my final answer should be x squared minus 6x plus 8. So you can FOIL it out and see that we still get really identical answers as mine. Then -2, then we multiply the 2 brackets. Then we're going to say x into x squared, x into -6, x into 8, -1 x squared, -1 into -6x, and -1 into +8. Let's quickly do that. X cubed, we're going to get x cubed, x by x squared with x cubed, x by -6x, we're going to get -6x squared, x by 8 will give us 8x, -1 by x squared, -x squared, -1 by -6x, we're going to get +6x, -1 by 8 will get -8. Now comes really a tricky part that a lot of learners, also including myself, like when I was at school, I'll probably lose really a few marks. And to avoid that, right, I came up with a very easy trick to do. Take a highlighter or different color pen and identify all your common factors. So all what looks alike. So you can see -6x squared has an x squared, and we can see another variable that has an x squared is -1 x squared. So we know that we're going to be pairing those together, either going to be adding them or subtracting them accordingly. So what we have, x cubed is alone, so we just really keep it that way. So -6x squared minus x squared will give us -7x squared. So we can also cancel them there, so that really we're not inundated by values and numbers. Now we have +8x and +6x. So we just add them together. +8 plus +6 would give us +14, and they are labeled x. And we have lastly -8. And remember, all of this is in brackets. Remember, there's a 2 on the outside. So really the final step here will be just say y is equals to multiply everything by -2. -2x cubed plus 7x squared, because negative times negative is positive. Then minus 28, 2 times 14, and positive 16. And we would have answered our question. But the last step we need to do is to write our answer based on how they asked the question. They said you must ask, find what f of x is equals to. We can just simply say f of x is equals to -2x cubed plus 7x squared minus 28x plus 16, and then that way we would have answered our question, and we would have gotten all our 4 marks really. And let's move on to the next part, and I'll be showing you a quick way. But before we do that, one more thing, is that really a quick summary of what you need to know. It's that when you're given really 3 x-intercepts, and point on the graph, and 1 point on the graph, you're going to use the formula y is equals to a x minus x1, x minus x2, x minus x3. And this formula will be very, very important in those conditions. And I'll see you in the next video.